What's going on, guys? What's going on? What's going on? Welcome in. When do I think tech will crash this bubble? It's coming soon. What's going on, KJ? What's going on, Doves? Blazer, what's going on? So I'm actually thinking right now if I should start with my surprise for the small account or if I should just save that to the end. I'm really thinking. I'm debating that part. What's going on, guys? Zeno, what's going on? I gotta admit though, futures do look nice. The funny part was that my small account challenge was actually pretty silent. So I was really just plotting how I was gonna get that back up, cause yeah, it wasn't doing so well. What's going on, PW? All right then, guys. Let's get started. I don't know who else is coming in, but as they pretty much try to trickle in here, I'll pretty much just drop the news. I saw some puts on NVAX. That was a nice play. I like that. NVAX was showing a lot of weakness even before this market drop, so that was a nice one. Short the weakness. Yeah, today, that forecast today, it looked like hail was just coming down. I mean, compared to the forecast that I have in Florida with the sunshine, this market was straight hail as we just dropped down. That was literally a waterfall as we just went straight down, right? But here's the breaking news. I actually took a Facebook call on the small account. As you guys saw, it wasn't doing too good. As pretty much what happened was that, my stop loss wasn't pretty much obeyed. For that matter, you guys saw that I slipped on a play and it really cost me. And so with the small account, I'm pretty much near around 500 so. And so I did take a play on Facebook. It's a what call did I take? It was a 340 call I took. That's pretty much in the money right now. And so what I was pretty much playing was not only the trend of Facebook, which I'll show you and I'll get to pretty much as I go to the takers. But also what I was looking at is the fact of where S&P was at the point right now at which I expected this bounce that we're seeing right now in futures. And so pretty much pointing into futures here right now, you can see that the green line right now here is the 100-day moving average. In which you see historically right now through this little run that we've had, we've actually bounced off of that 100-day quite a bit. We bounced here back in June, we bounced again in September, we bounced again in October of last year. And so now we finally breached that area yet again. And so I'm expecting a short-term bounce. It's not going to be something in which, we're going to continue to push hard and we're going to accelerate and we're going to moon to all-time highs. No, that's not the case. Okay? But I am expecting a little bit of a bounce here before some more headwinds come in with the earnings seasons right around the corner. And so that's what I was timing that bounce. And what was really critical to me is, of course, that 100-day moving average in which we just breached right back to back. And so as I saw that actually looking to hold and we got that bounce right into close, that's when I decided to take that play. And so, yeah, Tamakaze, if you're just joining, I took a Facebook 340 call. It's a weekly, by the way. So that was the play that I took on the small account. But breaching that 100 day and closing above it was really what was the sign for me. If we closed below that 100-day moving average, then I definitely would have stayed all cash. But again, this is also a risky play. As you see, there's a lot of plays, a lot of mega cap stocks that actually still are in somewhat of a bear flag formation, as we saw a little bit of a recovery into the close. So that's not a really necessarily a good sign, but I'm playing the overall market trend in which breaching that 100-day and holding above into close, that's where we're seeing where this bounce on futures is right now. Now, again, it is short term, so keep that in mind. Going into NASDAQ now, which I'll get into a smaller time frame, and you've seen this pretty much day in and day out as I pull up that head and shoulders for you guys. And right now, that head and shoulders did play out. We saw that rising wedge that I pointed out, and we just cracked it. We broke below the ascending wedge as well on the support line, and we are retesting it right now. Now, I do expect us to get back into it, in which we're going to get a little bit of a push right into the wedge before we likely chop around and then break back down. Okay. So that's what I would anticipate. I want to see what direction move we get tomorrow if this bounce does hold. As you see, Nasdaq's kind of just floating around just a bit. We pushed up to like 80 points or so. 80 basis points, we were hovering just around 57, 58. And so I do want to see if there's holes before I really evaluate my next direction and the peak of how much we can bounce if this move right now in futures holds. So that'll give an update tomorrow as far as how high we can reach, and I'll pretty much get a better update on my chart here. But right now, I want to see if this bounce is going to hold, if it's real, or if that fear is going to come back. All right. The other thing to keep in mind, which has pretty much been destruction right now, has been the 10-year yield. Okay. And I could pull this one out. Does it look better on the daily? I think it does look better on the daily. And let me get rid of the moving averages actually, because we are done looking at that. So as we saw, we had a little bit of a rising wedge formation. You would have anticipated that this would have broke down. It also had a little bit of an inverted cup and handle here, if you want to say that. But that wasn't the case. We ended up breaking resistance, and that's what's really caused that destruction in the market, amongst other things beyond with the Feds and the debt ceiling. So what I'm actually expecting now is that I don't expect this move to continue straight upward. I do expect to see some kind of consolidation, some kind of pullback on this move before the next directional move. And so I'm looking for that lower end of about 142-ish that I'm looking at. Right around this mark, it's actually about 143. Around this white line is what I'm expecting that pullback to take place. And that's going to give a little bit of ease for us to get some kind of bounce. The Fed tapering, of course, that's news over TA all day. If that news comes out, then yeah, we will likely fall like a brick yet again. And that could be the catalyst for when we do bounce here now, if that's potentially the case as we see futures, then that tapering will likely be that effect of which when we do see that next decline and we see it probably escalate a lot more than what we saw the past 2, 3 days here. Okay. But again, bigger picture, I'm expecting this to get some kind of pullback, consolidate before that next directional move. So that 143-ish level is what I'm watching on the 10-year. And so we'll see if that eases the tension in the markets and allows us to get this bounce. And that'll actually also determine the continuation on the bounce as well. So that's why it's a little bit more of a wait and see approach because, yeah, could there be more escalated downside? There could be. And this could be a fake out by morning. Okay, so the fear factor is really where we want to see how it sets in by morning. Is the fear still going to be there that we end up pretty much wiping out what futures is giving us right now? Or are we going to ease that tension? Okay, so that's big picture. Going into a few names, I'll actually point out the ones that stood out from yesterday's session. As we saw Netflix, I did point out Netflix was actually going to be a nice move. It still has that inverse head and shoulders formation right now. Even though we ended up dropping, which I actually had a target about 584, we just cracked it by what maybe about 15 cents or so. And so we're still holding that uptrend. So definitely watch this one as futures are pushing. And so we'll likely see this if futures do hold, we'll likely see this make that push towards that neckline. And we want to see this end up breaking that neckline right over to that point and see 598. Okay. If we do get to this neckline, it's right around the level of 593. So you get that ballpark number. That'll be that level in which we crack that neckline on that inverse head and shoulders. All right. The other one that actually stood out, and this is going to be an interesting one. I did miss this move. I actually felt that when I started dropping, that I was too late and I didn't want to chase it. But as I zoomed out and I actually went into the larger time frame, I do see that now this is similar formation to how we had on Roku and also on Zoom, where you have that double top formation and it plays out on a pretty large scale. Although Zoom and Roku was more on the daily, this one's on the hourly. We saw That's why we saw that escalation going straight downward, in which it was just 20 plus point after 20 plus point drop back to back days. Okay, and that just torched this name. Okay, so I am expecting either two scenarios to play out here. Either this may be somewhat of a bear flag formation, in which that completes the drop. It'll break support and complete the drop to where it needs to end on that double bottom. Or the other scenario is that we end up reaching to this gap and then we end up declining. Okay. So those are two cases that I'm looking at. Gaston, you're hilarious. All right, so that's Martin again. Either we end up bear flagging, we'll chop around this area, get a little bit of a relief bounce as the market bounces, or we end up pushing pretty quickly up to that gap fill, in which it'll be likely a nice spike upward to get a nice retracement on this drop and then decline. Okay, so those are the two scenarios I'm looking at on that one. The other one I highlighted yesterday was, if you remember, the MasterCard head and shoulders that we saw. That played out perfectly, and that was actually more of a massive candle than I expected because obviously I did not expect this kind of escalation to the downside as it was. So my level of support actually cracked, and that went right beyond that. But we ended up closing $2 just shy of what my target was to that downside on that recovery. And so we'll see exactly what the continuation on this is. It looks to me more so like a bear pennant actually. If I outline this, it looks more so like a bear pennant. So that may not be a good sign, but that is looking like a bear pennant right there to me. So keep that on alert. Looks a little bit more like a bear pennant in which that further upside is going to be capped. Okay. That was one that we saw yesterday. So that was a nice drop that we had on that one. Pointing out to the name that I am actually holding on my small account right now is Facebook. Again, pretty much all mega cap tech stocks have this same descending, expanding wedge, different styles. But this one I'm looking for a little bit of a relief here, in which, yeah, you could say this is a little bit of a head and shoulders formation, but be the case that, we're in oversold territory. If you look at the RSI, it is very oversold, in which we've already dropped X amount of points from where this high is of what 384 all the way down to the low of 338. I'm expecting the bounce. All right. So it's not going to be necessarily a rally that I'm expecting this to push to the moon. This is going to be a bounce. I may take profits pretty quickly right at open, but I'm targeting 345. Above that 345, then I'm looking at 349 for this move. All right. And that's contingent upon whether these futures do hold, if I actually hold my position. Okay. So those are the two things that I'm pointing out here for you guys. If we do end up pushing this 349, then it's likely that we wick right up to 351 before we end up getting some kind of pullback. All right. So that's what I'm looking at. Other than that, UPST was also an interesting one. I did highlight that we were at support at that point, which was about, yeah, that was yesterday actually. I pointed this one out. We were right around support, in which we had a nice little head and shoulders formation. We had that same nasty candle, pretty much like you just saw, like with MasterCard. And now this could be a bear flag formation, which is like a rising wedge. And we just drop down, and if we break 304, then I'm looking at this little gap that we have down here, right into that 293, 294 range. So that'll be one that I'm looking at. Likely scenario if the market does hold up is that we end up getting a retracement to retest the support that we broke, and it'll retest as resistance before we get further downside. All right. So that'll be the scenario I'm also looking at. We could end up pushing right up to about 337. Will be that level if we do get a strong move to the upside. Okay. That's another one I'm looking at. Let's see if I have anything else highlighted. Baba was actually an interesting one. I know that someone actually called out Baba in the chat and they wanted me to look at that, and I was like, a China name, really? But Baba's actually setting up beautifully right now with that inverse head and shoulders, breaking that long downtrend, and now likely going to test that gap fill right around that 155 mark. And so if it does end up breaking above that 155 mark, we're right into that gap fill in which we have a potential move right into that 160 level. Okay, so definitely keep that one on radar. I will watch this one for continuation. Strong move considering the market conditions, and China is due for a bounce for the most part. So I'll keep this one on radar tomorrow. I do want to get a spread for about a week out. It's just the market conditions. I don't really like that. I don't really like to hold positions like this in terms of market conditions, how they are. But again, if market conditions hold tomorrow, it's likely that it's going to ease tensions for the near term just shortly. And that may end up causing me to enter some spreads on some names that I do like that I'm going to expect some continuation. And Baba will be on one of those on that list. All right. Anything else that I had highlighted that I wanted to point out? No, that actually covered my watch list that I wanted to point out for the most part. Again, if tech actually holds up as it is right now, we're going to see a bounce. Certain names are really going to get a strong push. And so that's gonna pretty much cover the board as far as mega cap. We're gonna just see a nice little push right there. Tom, can you get Air Drake the ticker silhouette? That's hilarious. This guy. But other than that, I hope you guys actually had a strong day today. I'm assuming that a lot of you actually pretty much just watched the market for the most part. Don't worry, Michael. I pulled up Amazon for you real quick. I wasn't really gonna take a request tonight, but I did have Amazon pointed out. It looks a little bit like a channel that I actually have pointed out. As we saw this support line, it looked like it was pretty much a breaking point here and actual breakout point as well. As you see the up and under move here on this trend line that I drew down to the bottom. You also have a nice little support, trend line support as we fall down pretty much. And as you see, it's respected that support line and we've bounced. So I'm looking for this bounce. If we don't get this bounce, then yes, you're going to see a bear flag formation, which is pretty much outlined here. And then we'll fall down to that channel support. All right. I'll teach him. All right. We'll see about that. I took a spy put, made 15 bucks. That's not bad actually. I mean, you got to keep it small and keep it pretty tight. That's basically what you want to do in this type of situations. Can I talk about Super Fortuna? In what regard do you mean? What specifically do you want to know about it? Because that's a very broad question that you're looking for. And the thing with Super Fortuna is pretty much like all the other algos that trigger. You do want to take profits very quickly. Especially during market volatility times, you do want to take those profits when you see those 10 to 15% profits. That's how you get that consistency. Just as you normally would on your own with your own TA in which you should be taking those consistent profits, especially how you see Dan taking whether it be 9%, 10%, 15%, he takes them very quickly. You have to treat those algo alerts the same way. So when you see major flow, when you see rapid flow, you see Super Fortuna, you want to take those alerts very quickly. And if be the case, you leave some runners. Depending on your account size, your position size, then you leave some runners. All right. So that's what I would tell you as far as Super Fortuna and how to play it is try to get quick profits and if so, leave the runners. Okay. Other than that, guys, that kind of covers tonight. I did mention that I was in Facebook for what was the play that I had? 340 call in the money weekly. So that's what I'm actually holding. Again, I was pretty much playing the market trend for the most part as we held the 100-day MA on futures on the S&P. And so that's what I'm really looking for tomorrow as we see the bounces already taking place. Now, I want to see this actually hold by morning and see some strength out of it rather than fade by market open tomorrow. And that's what I'll be really locking in on. And that'll determine if I sell my position right at open or if I decide to hold for a little bit longer. All right. Other than that, though, I think that covers for tonight's session, guys. You guys have a good night. Hopefully, you guys didn't bleed out too much today. If you had calls and we're tempted to cause that FOMO and pretty much buy the dip. And catching the knife has not been very nice to us, as you see. By the way, I haven't seen Straight in chat. I definitely have to blow up his DMs because I haven't seen him and he's always telling us to catch the knife. And I haven't seen him tell me to catch any knife. So I definitely have to blow up his DMs to find out where he is. If you guys see him, tag me. But other than that, again, that covers tonight, guys. We'll see what tomorrow brings, and hopefully the market bounces so we can get some nice upside movement because we are due for it. A lot of oversold territory right now. So again, stay fluid. Like certain someone would say, like Dan would say, stay fluid, keep it small, keep those profits small, and any algos that do go off tomorrow, especially like I said with Super Fortuna, take the profits early. You see those 10 to 15% profits, take them, be consistent. Don't go for the home run, and then next thing you know, the market reverses on us, and you're left holding the bag. All right, but you guys have a good night, and we'll see you guys in